Do you want to come? A journey continues. My father, George, we called him Pop Gunn, turned 94 last June. In doing so, he aged older and lived longer than his parents, his two brothers, and their younger sister. And my mother, to whom he was married for 67 years before her death in 2017. Pop died on October 5th after 7 months in a pandemic-compromised assisted living healthcare facility and a few weeks in hospice care at Gibbons Highland Farms. Age and death can crystallize memories into mileposts. I have long recognized a most significant milepost in my own life and in my relationship with my father, George. The year was 1968, an era now synonymous with social and political upheaval, a string of horrible assassinations, the painful struggle towards civil rights, and the Tet Offensive followed by the highest annual death count of Americans, 16,000 in Vietnam. This was also the year my parents, two brothers, and our sister embraced a specious flirtation with family camping. As a Presbyterian minister, my father was a commissioner to the Presbyterian Church General Assembly, where church polity and politics play out. And for this biannual event, we plan to pull a pristine 4-person Sears pop-up camper to Montreat, North Carolina, and call it our summer vacation. 2 months earlier, the death of Martin Luther King Jr. stirred a 14-year-old to imagine a world larger and more complex than our hometown of Fayetteville, Arkansas, where my father was a university campus minister. We set out in early June, crossed the Mississippi River at the City of King's assassination, and drove east on our first and last cross-country family camping experience. After 3 days and only 600 miles, we surrendered and broke camp in Cookeville, Tennessee. We took refuge in a Howard Johnson's restaurant for breakfast, and it was there my father gazed across the dining room floor and gasped. The headline on a customer's newspaper told the tale. Bobby Kennedy had been shot. For the final 240 miles into North Carolina that day, and right through the old stone gatehouse at Montreat, I don't recall a sound but for the car radio that played and replayed the struggle in an LA hotel kitchen. Martin had been planning the Poor People's Campaign and its March on Washington. To much of the country, his death was announced by Bobby Kennedy, and now Bobby was struck down. Within these weighty days, the Presbyterian Church was preparing to debate. Would its Southern sect, since reunited, support the Poor People's Campaign in Washington? When the votes were counted, the Southern Presbyterian Church decided not to support the March on Washington. To his feet rose a pastor from Jackson, Mississippi, to ask, "What shall I tell my people when the church has turned its back on them? Where do I register my opposition to this action?" My father also rose, joined scores of dissenters in the aisles of Anderson Auditorium in a march to the dais, and added his signature to the statement of conscience and his commitment to participate. On the eve of the March on Washington, my cousins, with whom we were staying in Bowie, Maryland, talked of games to be played and cans to be kicked the next day. A subdued picnic was perhaps in the offing. Was I still sleeping or restless with indecision when my father leaned in and whispered to me and to my older brother, Do you want to march with me? The question broke through the pre-dawn darkness and hung in the already humid summer air, almost as if I were unaware my life was changing with it. Do you want to come? I said yes. We joined my father and other Presbyterian ministers and poor people from across the country for a trek into Washington, a walk through Resurrection City, a plywood and visqueen village of poverty and hope, and a full day of speeches. My father's voice, whispered before dawn on June 19th, 1968, drawing me from sleep, came as a question that has marked the major decisions I've faced since that day. My brother Wilson followed our father's footsteps as a college student at Davidson College and then to seminary. Wilson became a Presbyterian minister and recently retired as the Presbyterian executive of the National Capital Presbytery in Washington, D.C. and counties in Maryland and Virginia. As for me, in 1972, I returned to Memphis as an undergraduate at Rhodes College, and then I returned to Fayetteville, Arkansas as a graduate student in history. I interrupted and then terminated my academic career after a sabbatical of sorts, a year with a backpack in Asia and South Africa. And I took an internship with the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility, where I focused on issues of divestment from the apartheid government of South Africa. Concurrently, my father volunteered with, but I took his place on a faith-based delegation to Nicaragua in 1984 with Witness for Peace. Witness for Peace was committed to bringing U.S. citizens into the war zones in Central America, to document the effects of and then work to change U.S. foreign policy and the covert practices in the region in the 1980s. Soon thereafter, I returned to Nicaragua, where I joined the long-term team for 15 months to help plan and guide the delegations and to document the casualties of war. So what was my father's invitation to me so long, long ago? That voice in the night that challenged me to step out and comforted me as I returned. Surely his was an invitation to embrace justice, to challenge authority, and to be gently dissatisfied with an unexamined life. 20 years after the first of many journeys to Central America, I turned my father's question back to him. With a group of Episcopal Church journalists, I planned and embarked on a fact-finding trip to Guatemala and El Salvador. Do you want to come? I asked my father. Do you want to see where I've been the past 30 years? My dad said yes, I want to walk with you. And it was one of my life's greatest joys to walk with my father in his late 70s, who was following my footsteps on this 2-week journey. As he moved toward his mid-90s, Dad's steps slowed and the range of his reach began to shrink. He accompanied well his Sally through her dying days 3 years ago. He also embraced with joy both the independence and the limitations of life alone. And he continued to love to tell and relive the many stories of his long life. This year, Dad's long passion for writing and organizing and reliving his voluminous memoirs turned to winnowing his daily highlights and recounting his memories by the hour. But he remained, to the very end, gently satisfied by a life examined and one well lived. And who could ask for more? Do you want to come? Yes, Pop.